Hello and welcome back. This upload is a little bit different to my normal uploads. I've actually just created it because I made an offer in an earlier upload to elaborate on how to hear spiritual sounds, and I'm going to come to that in just a moment. The sounds I'm talking about are the sounds that Neville Goddard named celestial spheres in his book, or the sounds produced by what Neville called celestial spheres in his book, Prayer, the Art of Believing. One of my faves. I cannot recommend that book highly enough. It's such a comforting read, and it's one of those thin ones, so you can just sort of get through it very quickly indeed. But anyway, I just want to say that one of the reasons, and I wanted to mention this before I get into the sounds and all that, but one of the reasons I'm always banging on about the spiritual language of emotion is because of the way it helps us to understand the things of the spirit, if you like. And so when you hear something like the term celestial sphere, if you're using the spiritual language of emotion as a matter of course, you're not going to process that term literally. You're going to understand it to be what it is, a spiritual thing. And for those of you who might not know what a spiritual sphere is, it is a space or a location created within the vastness of infinite consciousness that emanates from a focused faith, wherein the object of the focus, whether that's a condition, a circumstance, a characteristic, or something material, becomes the energetic center of that space. And it's all to do with the way in which consciousness moves under an exchange of impulses and how we consent to those impulses and so on. So that's what we mean by celestial sphere. So Neville tells us that while we're moving within that space, within the celestial sphere, there is instruction being communicated. So as I've said before, we are literally telling consciousness as sons, so in the likeness of the life giver, we are telling consciousness what form to take. And Neville Goddard describes these as the mental sounds of prayer that are produced by our own individual celestializing. So the spiritual language of emotion as the mode of communication between our rudimentary human selves and our dimensionally greater selves enables us to more readily understand this substantiality. So, although Neville is talking about something that is completely spiritual, it is also entirely tangible and experiential on a human level. So, it's entirely tangible to us, and it's something that we can observe and experience. Hearing spiritual sounds is something we all can do, but it does take practice, particularly if you're not accustomed to prolonged, and I don't mean very, very long, but sustained for a specific amount of time, periods of stillness and quietness. And if you're not accustomed to that sort of thing, you're going to have to practice becoming still and quiet, which is really important if you are trying to experience what I'm describing. The way we're set up, awareness of our dimensionally greater selves is always optimized by the subjugation of our human self. So if you want to see using your spiritual or subjective or supernatural sight, for example, you would typically close your physical eyes. And if you wanted to touch something subjectively, you would relinquish faith in physical sensation and so on, and use your spiritual sense of touch instead. And that's how it works. So remember, our dimensionally greater body has senses that are typified on the human level by our five senses, well, six, including intuition. But to use one set in place of the other, you have to subjugate one in place of the other. A bit like that film Avatar. I think that's quite a nice representation of this sort of idea. Hopefully, you know what I'm talking about. It's a huge movie, so I'm sure you do. So back to spiritual sounds then. If you want to hear any now, you will have to set aside time to relax as deeply as you possibly can. And you're going to have to do so without disturbance. This is particularly for anybody who's just starting out in this sort of thing. If this is not something that you could do easily or at will, you're going to have to actually take the trouble to be somewhere on your own. When you're first starting out, it's really nice if you're able to do this very late at night when it's very quiet, or very early in the morning, which is probably the same thing. Um, and as I say, you want to be somewhere alone. For me, I like being in my super comfy bed, which is rather fabulous. Although sitting is just as good and probably recommended sometimes. Certainly, the better you get at these things. If you share a bed like I do, you might be able to ask the person you share the bed with to excuse you for half an hour, or you can carry yourself off to another room, whatever works. But ultimately, what you want to do is relax deeply, very, very deeply, and then you're going to start the process of quieting your mind. And if you're not sure how to quiet your mind, or you're not able to do it, one of the things you can do that helps is to focus on the sound of your breath, or imagine that you can hear the sound of your heart beating. And then as you focus on that sound, that particular thing, to the exclusion of all other thoughts, the sound will eventually carry you into a deeper state of relaxation. And I say, go as deep in relaxation as you feel confident to return from, without falling asleep altogether. Although you may fall asleep, which is fine, you'll just wake up and carry on as normal. When I like to listen to this particular sound, I find when I'm very, very deep, just before I get to the point where I can hear the celestial sounds, I am floating on a vast body of water, which is something I find very, very pleasurable indeed. And then shortly after, I find myself on that water, or beneath the surface of that water. I then slip into what I can only describe as being semi consciousness. So my mind is completely free of all mundane thought. And then I will experience pulsing waves of light. And then I go further still until I hear the sounds. And that doesn't mean that you're going to have this exact experience, because we're all different. But what I'm saying is there are a number of layers to the depth of the relaxation. So it does take a little bit of courage in going in, because it can feel strange. I think some people have reported feeling as though their body's separating and all sorts of exciting things. So just go as far as you feel comfortable to go, come back, revive yourself if you need to, and then try again another time. The point I'm trying to make with all of that is that hearing these sounds does require disciplined relaxation, and it's very deep relaxation, because what you're aiming for is sufficiency of stillness and quietness within. And you'll know when you've gotten to the point that you'll be hearing the celestial sounds, because they are extraordinary sounds. They will be something that you would never have heard before. And as you're listening to the sounds, what is even more exciting is the fact that you understand what the sounds are pertaining to, what they're communicating. And then you become aware of an exchange between your dimensionally greater self and some distance away, so it seems, your human being. And all you have to do is listen. And once you've listened and you're satisfied, you can return, as I say, to the surface. And when you do, you will find that you are preternaturally refreshed. It's a very incredible feeling. I wish I had another word in place of incredible, but you are going to find that you are strangely confident when you come back to the surface after a session like this. It's something you can't quite explain. You feel utterly fearless, and there's perhaps a lot you can do in that frame of mind, but you know, experience will be the most useful thing to guide you in that. As I say, all you have to do is listen, and then come to the surface, and then whatever you feel inspired to do after that event will be unique to you. So I don't have to make any comment about that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap up now. I just wanted to address these spiritual sounds and the experience of having them. But what I'm going to do in the next upload is a guided meditation, and that's to assist anyone who wants to practice what I'm describing and might want a little help. You're, of course, free to get going with this. You don't need me at all. I always prefer that we always cultivate our own practices and so on. And please, as you have your own experiences, do share them with me, not just privately by email. I do love getting emails. I've had 2 or 3 over the past week or so, but share them with each other too. And as I say, yes, I will do a guided meditation in the next upload. I hope to get to that this week. It's Sunday today, so I just wanted to get this up as promised. And I do hope that this answers the question for those of you who are interested in the idea of spiritual sounds. So do give it a go. Just practice going as deep as you can. And what you want to do is to become very still. And in so doing, you are completely subjugating the human aspect of your Trinity, and you are operating as your dimensionally greater self. So thank you very much for listening to this brief upload. Until we are together again, stay phenomenally you.